All right, welcome back to FantasyLabs. I am Bryan Mears. I'm joined by Colin Davy and Peter Jennings, aka CSU Ram 88. And in this video, we are going to review and talk our lineups in the PGA Eagle. This is something that we've done a couple times now. We did it last week, and we want to do it regularly, where we talk about our lineups in this 3-entry max tournament, just because ownership and lineup construction is interesting in this type of format. We'll make fun of each other a little bit and hopefully sharpen our process. So we will start with mine. Hopefully you can see my lineups here. I cashed one of my three. And really, I definitely kept a tight core. That was something I'm trying to do a little bit more, as opposed to, if I'm building 100 lineups, getting exposure to a lot of guys. I'm building a tighter core and hoping that my core goes off. I had a couple really good picks. I had like 70% Steve Stricker, which was nice, maybe a little donkeyish, but I really played the wind angle strong, and that led me to a lot of John Rahm, a lot of Kisner, a lot of Stricker, as you can see here. But unfortunately, it also led me to some Martin Laird and Kyle Stanley, who let me down. So definitely not as profitable of a weekend as I was hoping for because of those guys letting me down. But that was really it. I kept a really tight core across all of my lineups. Made about 30 lineups this weekend. But unfortunately, if your core doesn't hit, then it's just a middling or not profitable weekend. Colin, give me some feedback here. Maybe Martin Laird or Kyle Stanley shouldn't have been a part of my core. I think Kyle Stanley was probably the more egregious of the picks just because his ownership, although I did not expect it to be quite as high as it was across the industry this weekend.
Brian, this is actually kind of weird because this is looking suspiciously similar to a lot of my lineups here, because I also played the wind angle hard. And a lot of this core is on the same. I had Martin Laird and just about everything that I had to. I thought it was a good pick. He missed the cut by 1 stroke, so it wasn't that bad. Had decent history, and ownership wasn't as high. I was also surprised by Stanley's ownership. I thought he was going to come in around 14 or 15 because I thought people would be massively preferring Pat Perez, which they did. He was one of the 3 highest weekend. But I don't mind Kyle Stanley from what I did not consider is how much will wind affect ownership when it was clearly touted as a play the wind angle type of stuff. I think the interesting one I'd love to talk about is knowing that wind definitely does influence ownership, given you saw people like Grillo and Kyle Stanley have way higher ownership than you'd otherwise expect. Who would you take on the bad side of the wind draw that made it almost game theory optimal to go with that? I had Stricker in a lot of my lineups originally, and I took him out, and I don't know whether or not that was a mistake or not. The aging curve for golfers over 50 is just so normally the drop off is so huge that I don't even look at golfers over 50 in normal analysis. And he pops really high in models, but that is not priced in. So I thought there wasn't necessarily enough upside with him. Mm-hmm. But again, I don't know if I'm just playing myself and getting too cute. So I took him out. He did well this week. Maybe it's something that I have to reconsider. Pete, we talked about him on the podcast before. Is Stricker a good? What do you think? Stricker was a good GPP play? Yes or no? Or is this just way too lucky for someone that's normally his age?
I actually thought he was a really good play. I thought this was the perfect course to take him. Obviously, the downside in Stricker's game is distance at this point in time with his age. Still one of the best putters, if not the best putters on tour. Obviously an accurate guy. And, it sounds cliche and it sounds a little too narrative-ish for probably Colin. But, he's talked extensively about how he's really pushing to qualify for the U.S. Open. He needs to get up to the top 60 in the world. I believe he's in the high 70s, low 80s now after this finish. So he's doing everything to sharpen his game. He really wants the U.S. Open. If there's ever a course to take him at, I think this was a really nice setup, given that it was strictly an accuracy course. The one downside is he's probably not going to make as many birdies as other guys. So on DraftKings, his scoring isn't great, but the one thing is he can get really hot. He really had a chance on Sunday to put together a historic round, and a lot of that has to do with his putting and his accuracy. So I thought he was a fine play. In general, I'm with you. I'm fading these old guys, but I think if there's ever a time to take an older player, it's at an accuracy course. And Stricker is definitely not your normal 50-plus guy. I mean, he's still top 100 player in the world, and certainly has strengths that can match up. I mean, his putting, I'd give me Steve Stricker versus pretty much anyone out there in terms of his putting ability.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely have the same thoughts as you, Colin. Am I really going to be this overweight on Steve Stricker at his age? But really, what I did was that I took a really hard stance on weather, and I knew that it would probably be a little higher ownership. But I thought that if I was overweight on it, if I really believed in it, I could still get some value. So I almost essentially eliminated half my player pool. I mean, I had 0% Pat Perez, which may have been a mistake. Obviously it worked out this time, but so I eliminated half my player pool, and then really went driving accuracy and guys that I thought could be a little bit lower. And I thought Steve Stricker was, a guy who's just really accurate off the tee and would have lower ownership. So you got to take stands in these tournaments to hit first place, like you did with Kokrak and some of these guys before. So that was my thought. But it would have been a really nice week had, Laird, and especially Laird, had, not missed the cut by a single stroke. But it is what it is. I mean, your hope is to win a tournament. I think the best way to do it is your core goes off. So, I had just an average week, but if Laird makes the cut, then it's looking like a pretty solid week. I think that's a pretty good way to play tournaments. So I was pretty pleased with my process. Colin, do you want to talk about some of yours?
These look like a here. Let's do the Royal Tour. Like, how do the rest of the lineups look? Like, who else is in the core here?
Really,
that's good. Like, I had a little bit of Phil originally too. Like, Phil had also higher ownership than I thought. Like, I mean, the Flyers are the Flyers. Like, maybe the only one that I don't get is something like Rod Pampling, but like that's just a minor. Like, I mean, I had my Flyers, and it's not like my Flyers are above scrutiny either here, because I am really wondering if I out-leveled myself on a couple different ways. So, all right, let's do our worst here. So, I have mine right here. All right, so a lot of the core looks a lot of the same. Like, you see like a lot of Laird. Like, my top end was basically like the Rom Sergio pairing, which like I thought like between them and Spieth, like they're a little bit higher owned because they didn't price and weather, but like they had the good side of the weather draw. So like that core I have no problem with. The guy who ended up in pretty much every single one of my lineups was Luke List, and I wasn't happy about it because like what the weather forced me to do was be high on guys that like I wasn't happy about in terms of like, odds of doing well were high, but ownership was low.
What was his price last week?
It was like 6,700.
Okay.
So it's basically like I needed a cheap guy that was going to be low owned. And in List's case, like it was pretty much bad course history. It was bad fit. But if your conviction is the weather angle, and I thought that all of the chalk was on the bad side of the draw, and so like if there's everything that's going to get chalk to do worse, it's going to be like the weather, so play the weather heavy. List also had not just a good side of the draw, but the best tee time, going off like exactly first, so that he had literally no holes under like the 20-mile-an-hour winds. So, and I also knew that he would be sub 2% owned. So it's like, given that I need low ownership, the only other guy that fit the bill there was Stuart Sink. Mm-hmm. And the results-oriented process would have said like, well, you get 10th. You clearly should have rostered him. But like, I took him out because like, if you look at his upside or his stats rather, he had even worse history and just like didn't have like, just has no top 10 finishes in his history. So I don't know on two levels if I out-leveled myself. One is List just like too awful of a course fit and is like something like driving distance overrated on a less than driver course, which is like a characteristic that doesn't show up in data. And two, like, is this idea of like upside and just like basically arbitrarily removed him from like all of my lineups because I wasn't convinced that I could win a GPP with him.
Yeah.
Is that like where are the mistakes? Do you think there are mistakes in that, or is it just like, all right, like it was correct to play the guy with the best weather draw? Do your worst, guys.
Yeah, I mean, I think my question and I'm trying to figure it out myself, so it's not that I'm critiquing you here. I'm really trying to figure out, with 6 golfers and FanDuel's going to have 8 golfers with their new product, do you need a 65, 67 guy to have upside? And what does upside mean? Like, is it 70 DK points? Because, yeah, I mean, we talked about Stricker in mine. And really, like, with guys like that and Laird, I was less concerned about could they get into the top 3, top 5, and more concerned of could they get into the top 20 and make the cut and not tank my lineup. And then my core of, Rom and Sergio and those guys, could they, get in the top 5 and really vault my lineup? But that's what I'm curious is with those cheap guys, are you trying to get 6 through, or are you trying to collectively get in the top 5? People, what are your thoughts on that? Like, for these cheap guys, are you more just looking to complete your 6 lineup and have everyone make the cut? Or are you really truly looking for upside there?
I think it's a combination of both for sure. I mean, certainly the win equity of these really cheap guys is a lot lower, but you can still look for upside in the way they score. I actually like the Luke List pick. Obviously, he's way more of a bomber, but in tournaments, I certainly don't mind him at all, especially with the best tee time. And he has a lot of upside. I mean, Luke List is someone we've talked about a lot this year. Definitely can really, get a lot of birdies and certainly can go after par 5s. It just really isn't a good course fit for him. So I understand kind of the struggle in terms of trying to figure out how good of a play he was. The ownership makes me think that it was probably a really good move. Looking through the rest of your guys, I would have been all over Grillo this week. I'm with you guys. Grillo and Rom probably would have been my 2 chalk guys. Yep. I also would have had a hard time fading Pat Perez, who I thought was just an auto cash game play. In tournaments, certainly there's a lot of merit because we knew he was going to be heavily owned, but balancing the combination of the chalk guys and the low owned guys is certainly always kind of the art of making these tournament teams. If you're going to go heavy on Luke List, one strategy I've seen from some of the guys I respect the most is basically firing off 4, maybe even 5 guys who are just straight chalk, and then having that one guy in the lineup that they know is really, really contrarian to get leverage. So Colin, I like the teams relatively, but I think you could have even gone a little bit more chalk. If you're going to play Luke List, I don't think you have to play someone like Sam Saunders or Von Taylor, even though those guys end up playing well, just because you have so much leverage already with Luke List in Martin Laird. But I certainly can hear the argument against both of those things. I've seen a lot of guys have a lot of success, and I think it also matters the tournament you're playing. If you're playing a tournament with a flatter structure, I think going with a little bit more chalk and having 1 or 2 leverage guys is fine. If you're playing a top-heavy tournament, certainly having multiple guys who are really leveraged makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, that's like the concept of where your leverage comes from is one that I don't explore enough. Just like at an aggregate level, I really play it is that like leverage and ownership is far more predictable in that relative to figuring out how golfers are going to do. So just like more leverage in all cases is just always better. So like low ownership is always better. Maybe there's certain spots where you can go chalky at like high value guys or maybe top end or something like that. And then like you still get enough leverage like out of the flyers. I get it in theory, but like, I don't know, maybe it's even more contrarian to say like, no, just like more leverage is always better. Just like given the sheer sample sizes of the fields that you're playing, that like you can never have enough leverage. I don't think that angle's necessarily been explored yet. And I think like it's like I think I'm still going to try to boost as much of my leverage as possible and go as low ownership as possible at all times for now. But like, I don't know. I think that's something that we should be exploring definitely, because I don't think it's solved.
Yeah, last thing I did want to discuss real quick is just the Pat Perez angle. Yeah, I mean, it was a hard fade for sure, but I think the wind made it a lot easier. Like the combination where yes. I thought he has a really bad wind draw, and I thought he was going to be the chalkiest guy. So like if that was the case on like John Rahm or DJ or whoever it might be, I would be underweight, but I wouldn't like completely fade. But I mean, a guy like he's super talented, but he's not like Rom level. A guy who's going to be 30% owned with like a really bad draw was a little less concerning for me to fade. Well, was that same sort of thing for you, Colin?
Yeah, I think so. Like that sounds about right. The Perez just made the win angle just made the Perez fade easy. Like, I don't even know that. I mean, the fact that I thought he was going to be like 30% just made him easy, to be honest. The win was kind of a kicker. Like, I think that is kind of I think the most interesting question is like essentially like at what ownership for a given player would you fade them, like regardless of how well you think they're going to do. I think Perez was definitely in that territory. I've asked you that before. Like, there has to be like a predicted ownership at which like auto fade is the correct GPP strategy, right? You believe in that concept at least, right?
Oh yeah. No,
yeah.
I mean, it's a certain ownership. It doesn't matter. I mean, like, you know,
yeah.
like, you just have to fade
in the case of Perez, where I thought it'd be like Perez at 30%, you'd still get off him.
Oh, with the win angle too, for sure. But I mean, I thought his price was $1,000 too cheap at least.
Oh, yeah.
You know, like
I agree. But like, I completely agree. I thought it was like way too cheap, but I thought like that's what was going to induce 30% ownership.
Right. He's a fine fade at that percentage for sure.
And hint, check out this week's podcast for the Memorial Tournament. He is probably $1,000 underpriced yet again. So. Pat Perez.
Oh, yeah.
Dominating the
it's going to be the same. Yeah, it's going to be the same chalk across the board for sure.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you guys for watching. We enjoy talking our process in these videos. We're going to be back probably soon, probably next week, but definitely we're going to do these throughout the summer. You guys can see our process, our strategy and thoughts in actually building lineups. Thanks again for watching, and we'll talk to you guys soon.